ho, ho. Welcome back, everyone, to the Discovering Bob Dylan podcast. Special episode. It's a regular episode, but it is a damn special episode. For tonight, we shall be talking about Bob Dylan's 34th album, one that I don't think anyone saw coming. It is Christmas in the Heart. It is Christmas in July for us because we're talking about this. There it is, kind of blending it up, and you're gone. And he's gone.
Sorry. And there we are.
There it is. Christmas in the Heart in all its glory, held by co-host Dylan in front of, well, it's not a roaring fire, but a
Yeah.
fully lit and decorated Christmas tree. And
Yeah.
it appears to be a Santa Claus outfit that you're wearing. Can you?
Yeah, well, big man's on his way, so we've got our hot cocoa and we're just getting ready and I'm ready to talk about possibly the greatest soundtrack for the season ever made here as we enter recording literally on the first day of Christmas in July. So it's perfect.
Yes, the exact right time. We planned this perfectly, of course.
Yes.
And you are in the Bob Dylan spirit, the Christmas spirit, always the Bob Dylan spirit here on the Discovering Bob Dylan podcast. I mean, this album, I don't even know where to begin with this album. Dig if you will, the year is 2009. Bob Dylan just released four astoundingly successful albums, dating back to 1997, a career renaissance. His last album, Together Through Life, which we talked about in the last episode, became his first album ever to go to number one in both the US and the United Kingdom. He is, Bob Dylan is riding high. And what does he do next? The most Bob Dylan thing possible. He, in the same year that I think like literally days after Together Through Life came out, he's pivoting to a Christmas album. Do you know what was going through his mind when he decided to do a Christmas album? Because to me, it just feels like the most Bob Dylan thing you could possibly do. Bob Dylan sitting there, top of the world, thinking, what could I do that no one on earth would be expecting? And in true Bob Dylan fashion, the answer was to release a Christmas album.
Yes, and it's hysterical. However, as hysterical as conceptually, it's hysterical, but it also makes sense because one of the many reasons we love Bob, and I feel comfortable saying we, because at this point you are clearly an established lover, is his innate ability to channel the true organic spirit of folk and traditional music. So even if you hate Christmas music, and there are many people out there who write off Christmas music as if they're allergic to the idea of critical thought, but that's, another conversation for another time. Even if you hate it, it is unarguable that quite a few of the compositions, even on this record, are as steeped in tradition as any Americana song. And the reverence that Bob has for, again, the tradition, you know, we will get into the meat of the album here, but I I I think it makes so much sense listening to the record. Honestly, regardless of the humorous aspects of the concept or the content. But I will say, man, I remember when we got word of this, so especially, for as long as I've been a Dylan fan, my dad and I have, shared in it together. He's the one that named me after Bob. He's the one that introduced me to his music. And when we found out that he was releasing a Christmas record, we simply couldn't contain our excitement for everything you just said. It's like this is the most Bob Dylan move imaginable. And I'll also never forget. my dad somehow got his hands on a pre-release copy, and I remember him putting it on the stereo. He didn't tell me what he was doing, but just from the opening notes, I have such a fond, vivid memory of him and I just meeting eyes and having this reaction. And it's I think it's incredible. And to touch on what you said last episode, you made a really great point last episode. And even leading with what you just said now, he didn't have to do this, especially because he had just released these records over the last 12 years that were so critically acclaimed. And to further drive home the point that he didn't have to do this, all of the proceeds for this record went to charity and continue to go to charity. To our knowledge, Bob Dylan has never seen a cent from this. This is not a project designed for him to make a quick extra buck, which I think for a lot of people who are so quick to write off a lot of Christmas music, they are probably understandably annoyed by and turned off by, especially, the bigger acts who clearly do a Christmas song or a Christmas album every 10 years just to capitalize and play into the commercialism of it all. And but that's not what this is. And but I'm interested to know what you think it is. But do you have anything to add? I mean, if I feel weird asking, do you have anything to add about the story around it? Because I feel like just saying Bob Dylan Christmas album is a story in and of itself.
I mean, from what I could see, there isn't like some big backstory about, a legend. He wasn't like, awoken on a winter's eve by the, rustling of sleigh bells or something and had oh, I have to make a Christmas album. It wasn't quite like the Christian trilogy where he had an awakening. It just seemed to happen. And like you were saying, usually when you do a Christmas album, it's because you're trying to make a quick buck or you owe your record company an album is usually the case, or you've basically passed your prime, you got nothing left in the tank. Let's break out a Christmas album. It's all we got left. And in this case, that none of that applies at all. Because like you said, it all went to charity. He's riding high. It's also weird because at this point he was kind of back to being Jewish. So
Mhm.
like, it
As
doesn't
far as
really.
we know, yeah, it's
Right,
it's
right.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his religion at the time, I guess, is a unending question. But
Yeah.
he was born Jewish. He converted to Christianity, and he kind of, from what I read, he kind of had gone back to Judaism. But it's not like he had another religious awakening or anything and said he had to do a Christmas album or anything like that. It's not like that. So the only thing I can really think of is just that it was just a Bob Dylan thing to do, and he wanted to, you know, portray these songs, these Christmas songs, like you said, traditional, steeped in the history of American song. And he wanted to do it right, and he did it straight. And I think when it came out, at least from what I could read about it, a lot of critics thought it was ironic. And that was not it at all. He did an interview with Bob Flanagan, I believe his name was.
Bill Flanagan.
Bill Flanagan, who said, critics are saying that this is, kind of a joke, the ironic treatment of these Christmas songs. And Dylan said, critics like that are on the outside looking in. They're definitely not fans or the audience that I play to. They would have no gut level understanding of me and my work, what I can and can't do, the scope of it all. Even at this point in time, they still don't know what to make of me. And that is correct. That is an excellent rebuttal from Mr. Dylan there. Just whoosh, to all the critics who thought, he would do an ironic take on these classic songs that, in 2009, probably even more so the idea of Christmas kind of looked down upon and Christmas songs kind of looked down upon. And I'm sure everyone was sick of hearing Mariah Carey and songs like that, Carrie Underwood and Kelly Clarkson's versions of new Christmas songs. And I Christmas was not a cool thing, and the Christmas songs were certainly not a cool, a thing to do to sing. And Bob Dylan just comes out swinging with totally straight, unironic, well-crafted versions of Christmas classics, from Bing Crosby and Elvis and all the other people who did these songs originally. He's not BSing about this stuff.
No, he's not. And I think that, another aspect of it again that just makes so much sense is, yes, he's very much rooted in this folk tradition, and especially when we consider songs like, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, um and the hymns that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, that plays a part. But even outside of music, Dylan is such a student of culture and true Americana, not just the music genre, but like looking at the cover of the record, it's a very classic, like sort of, it doesn't look like exactly like Norman Rockwell, but that kind of like 1940s, 1950s Americana style. When you think of Christmas, even, looking past it as a religious holiday, Christmas has, for better and for worse, depending on the circumstance, become a cultural thing. And that is why these songs by, Irving Berlin are setting aside the 100-year-old hymns and whatnot. And he values that. He's a student of that just as much. And the whole presentation of it makes so much sense. I Oh man, I guess I don't know where else to go other than to get into it. I mean, it shouldn't be any surprise that actually, you know what? Before we get into it, I will ask you, how how do you normally feel about Christmas music in general? Is it something that you enjoy in the season? Is there like certain limits or thresholds to your enjoyment of it, or I mean, eat Christmas in general? Where do you stand? Christmas, good idea or no? Joe, take it away.
Big Christmas fan, love the holiday. I am a seasonal enjoyer of Christmas music. I do not, listen to Jingle Bells in July or, maybe if the Beach Boys are doing Little Saint Nick, I'll leave it on, but I'm not seeking out Christmas music anytime between December 26th and, December I'll give it 2 weeks. December 11th. Between December 12th and December 25th, I'm all about the Christmas music. It's a little overkill these days because there's a station here in Pittsburgh that will just play Christmas music for the entire month of December. And when you're hearing the same songs 800 times, it loses some of its, impact. But the first time I hear those songs, I enjoy them, and I'm good with that. I like the classics, more of the old-fashioned Christmassy tunes, more so than, the Gene Autry and the Bing Crosby and the Elvis tunes. I like classical music when it comes to Christmas, I think, a little bit more. But I do not hate on Christmas at all. And yeah, I'm fine with a good Christmas tune, but I don't really seek them out.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Yeah, it's interesting. We've had multiple debates on the Taste Like Music Discord server, which you out there, Mr. and or Mrs. Viewer, can be a part of if you donate as little as $1 a month to the Taste Like Music Patreon. You come talk with us. And there's people on the server who are like true, honest to God, students and historians of music who love and appreciate, everything that Christmas music entails. And there's people who passively enjoy it, and there's some real Grinches and Scrooges on there. And look, maybe I was being harsh earlier when I said that these people are allergic to critical thought, because I, I get it. When if you're overexposed to something, 1000%. And yeah, you're lucky if you have a station that only does it the month of December. There's a station I know back home in Rhode Island that come November 1st through the end of the year, it is all day, every day. And yeah, that's a lot. And no one wants to be subjected to that. And no one needs to be subjected to friggin' Pat Monahan from Train doing Joy to the World, that except maybe my mom. Oh man, my mom might watch this and she's gonna get mad at me for saying that. Sorry, mom. Love
Bless
you.
her heart.
Uh bless her heart. I get it. And yeah, some Christmas songs suck, of course, but again, I think maybe part of it is the fact that I too just tend to enjoy the season and everything it is. I'm not a particularly religious person, but I do very much value family and friends and expressing love and gratitude and coming together and so on and so forth. I love, giving gifts. Every now and then I don't mind receiving a gift. So maybe that plays into it. I think some of it is I also consider myself surely not a full-blown historian, but I love, classic, anything you could call folk, folk, blues, country, but really just the origins of popular music, which you have to talk about Christmas music. And then also some Christmas music just rules. I will listen to Vince Guaraldi, Charlie Brown Christmas, 12 months out of the year. Like just a great record, Christmas or not Christmas. And then come the season, like I don't see what's not to enjoy about Nat King Cole's Christmas record. I don't see what's not to enjoy about John Fahey, playing his, primitive American outsider guitar. Some of it's just so damn good. I don't know. I can understand why some people maybe have a hard time with it overall. Everyone's entitled to their opinions. But I'm glad to hear that for the most part, you have an open mind. The question is, where does that open mind come into play when you're listening in the middle of the year to a later period Bob Dylan Christmas record? And take me inside
I'll take you back.
every,
Take you back to
yeah.
the moment I put it on. And I did not do research before I listened to the album because I wanted a pure heart and a clean conscience when I put this on. I didn't want to know like what direction. I didn't want to know if it was straight or if it was ironic or what the treatments would be. So I put it on, I put on my headphones, I hit play, and I have to say I had a big smile on my face when I heard it because it's so straight that it's almost like unhinged how like I almost couldn't believe he would do this and just like totally play it straight. There's no there, I struggle to even like describe it because it sounds like a Christmas song. It sounds like it could be, a Gene Autry or a Bing Crosby or an Elvis. The way
It
it's
is.
all well, right, right. But the way it's recorded, the way it has like the female choir and the male choir and the children's choir and the instrumentation and the tastefulness of it all, it's just so like right down the middle. I guess I was surprised at that when I heard it because the first song it kicks off the album kicks off with Here Comes Santa Claus, which is a perfect opener because it is like it's not, something a little more stately like Silver Bells, which he is on here, or something like a little town of Bethlehem. Like it's a very kind of upbeat, fun, like, oh, here comes Santa Claus, like everybody loves Santa Claus. Everyone knows the Gene Autry version, or whoever did the original. Gene Autry wrote
Gene
it.
Autry. Yeah.
Um, and it just comes blaring out of the speakers like, I don't know, it's transported from 1958 or whatever. And it just took me aback. I can't believe he's doing this at this age after his hot streak, his modern day Renaissance period, and he's gonna do this. And it's hilarious, but it's rather good, I must say. Like he didn't cut corners here. He brings in a lot of the same band members that he had on Together Through Life. No Mike Campbell. That might be weird. Um, but a lot of the same players. David Hidalgo's back doing accordion and some other instruments. So it's a really great band. It's got all the trappings of a Christmas song, Christmas music. So it doesn't feel like a put on or ironic because he's just going for it. He's going for it straight. He's honoring the original songs and making them, a little Bob Dylan-y, but you know, not overly Bob Dylan-y. He's just kind of doing it. And I think it's pretty hilarious, pretty great, pretty fantastic interpretations across the board. The big question, or the big hang up for me, of course, is his voice is so gravelly and just destroyed at this point that it works on a lot of levels and it works very well for some songs. Some songs I thought it was a little too rough to really bring out the joy in my heart.
The
But
Christmas in Your Heart.
yeah, yeah, the Christmas in my heart. But you have a song like Must Be Santa, which is like this polka number. And he's like scrambling along, keeping up with the lyrics and the band. And it's just one of the funniest, greatest things I think I've ever heard in my entire life. Like it's beyond words. It's undescribable. Like you just have to hear it. You have to hear what he's done with Must Be Santa. I don't even know what to say. Christmas Island, he's got the Hawaiian country island feel. He's got the soft female backing vocals. The Here Comes Santa Claus, the opener, like he's singing along. You got all the male, the 50s mall male choir, delightful behind him. It sounds like it's like ripped off of like an old Rankin Bass Christmas special. Like that's the vibe I'm getting here. And it also has this like really great articulated guitar running through it, which is really beautiful. Like it's, there's no like weird haggardness going on with anything other than Bob Dylan's voice and maybe his cadence at times. Everything else is just like so perfect and so beautiful and so well arranged, so well produced. All the technical aspects are perfect. And it's just, it has to be heard to believe because I don't really know if we can do it justice just talking about it. Because it sounds exactly like you would think a really old Bob Dylan would sound like playing with like a perfectly tuned Christmas, instruments and production. And yet, like, you can't really imagine that until you hear it in action. And, he doesn't pull off everything perfectly. I think the first Noel, maybe he doesn't quite have the range to pull that off in a way that really suits my ears, my taste. But I think for the most part, he does a very good job of coaxing whatever he has left out of his vocals. And these songs aren't necessarily easy to sing either. It's not like really basic stuff. Like these are kind of advanced tunes with some really strong melodies, and he's doing his best. God bless him. But I mean, I can't say I loved it and would listen to this all the time. And I definitely wouldn't play it for my children because it would scare the hell out of them. But I
They
would.
might need that.
They could. They would make me turn it off, probably.
Good
But
loss.
when they're older, when
Yes,
they're older, they'll
of
get it.
course.
I think all in all, he does a very good job with this album. And, for a Christmas album, it's one of the better ones I've heard, I think. Like, as far as like a singular artist doing a Christmas album, it would probably fall behind, Beach Boys, maybe Stevie Wonder. But,
But
I'll take it over Whitney Houston. That's for damn sure.
yeah, I definitely wouldn't put it on Vince Guaraldi or Nat King Cole level. Um, but I will say I'm excited for you to revisit this one come December 11th because I'm not kidding. I play this record every Christmas and I'm filled with so much joy. And yeah, you're right. If you take his voice out of it, it's like the most cliche. It's like you almost like fed it into like chat GPT, make me a Christmas sounding album, which I will immediately walk back because I think his arrangements, and it's honestly a bit of a precursor to the Sinatra trilogy. Slight spoilers for you, but the way that he incorporates a lot of the pedal steel, and as much as you can tell he's borrowing from the Bing Crosbys and the Sinatras in terms of some of the approach. A lot of it's there's some horns here and there, and obviously the background vocals, but it's the arrangements have a lot of room to breathe, which you don't always get. A lot of Christmas music is just like coming at you all the time, and I I just remember, like I said, it was one thing when my dad put it on, and it opens up with the sleigh bells, as so many Christmas albums do. But what got me was immediately after the sleigh bells, that male choir coming in. And that's when our eyes really widened because, I mean, the guy has hardly had any, you know, backing vocals on his records in quite a while now. And to have the sickly sweet male and female choirs, and it's one of those things where I think two things can be true. I do think that he played this straight, all things considered. But Bob is also a smart guy. And Bob is a very funny guy. And I find it hard to believe that someone as intelligent and humorous as Bob Dylan doesn't see the humor of the juxtaposition of his voice with a lot of these arrangements. And that's okay. That doesn't make it necessarily all ironic or a joke, but there's there's a bit of fun being had there. And that's great because Christmas is about fun. It's about a lot of things, but especially when you're a kid, like it brings me back to that feeling of like this is so ridiculous and fun. Must Be Santa is it's as purely fun as anything he has ever recorded. I unironically love everything about it. There is an unbelievable music video for this, which by the time you're watching this review, hopefully, well, I don't know, maybe it'll come out the day after. You have not watched it yet. We decided we're going to do a reaction video to it, and I cannot wait to see you watch it for the first time. But Bob is having fun, and you hear it with the interactions with the background vocalists. You hear it with some of the arrangements. There are also moments where I do hear him taking it seriously. And I hear again that reverence that he has for the material. I think his vocal performance on Little Drummer Boy is as solid as anything he's committed to tape in the last 25 years. There's hardly any rasp to be found on it. It sounds fantastic. And then there's other songs where I think the gravelly voice almost kind of works. I think one of our friends on the Discord, his name is Ausmund, and he really described it well one time as, he sounds like, if you go to a Christmas service at church, you know, the old men in the back who have, been weathered by age and all the years and everything, but they feel the spirit within them, and they feel, the energy of everyone there with them, and it comes out, and it's maybe not the prettiest thing in the world, but like when I listen to Bob do Silver Bells or Do You Hear What I Hear, I'm like, you know what? It works. And it does not work on every song. I'll forever appreciate the one review that referred to the closing song as "Oh Little Town of Bethlehem," and it is horribly sequenced as the closing track. I think it's the easily the weakest on the record. It comes right at the end. There's hardly any life to it whatsoever. Not a fan of it. I don't know if it was that review or if it was another review that said Bob Dylan makes "I'll Be Home for Christmas" sound like a threat. And I also agree with that one. and but then, Christmas Island works. The Christmas Blues works. I think Winter Wonderland in the same works in the same way that Here Comes Santa Claus does. It's ridiculous, but it's ridiculous in this very like pure sort of way. And I will also never forget listening to Hark the Herald Angels Sing. To your point about these songs not being easy to sing, it started and Bob comes in, "Ah, the Herald Angels Sing glory to," and already at that point you can tell he's struggling. And my dad and I looked at each other, and so we're thinking, well, surely as soon as "Joyful All Ye" is, we're like, that's when the background vocals are going to come in to save him. And he keeps going. And we looked at it and we're like, okay, well, clearly they're going to help him on "With Angelic." He keeps going right up until "Hark the Herald." And it is, it's simply magnificent. And it boggles my mind to think that there are people that don't have the sense of humor to be able to enjoy something like it, because it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it is completely not a joke. And I love that those two things can coexist together. And I love it. I'm so happy that you like this record.
I will say, I think this was the perfect time for him to do this album. And, Bob Dylan, I don't think really cared what people thought about him throughout his career. Like he's always kind of been a guy who just does what he wants. But at this advanced age for him, for most singers, and not a lot of singers his age putting out new material, stuff like that. He just has the confidence in himself, the confidence in, the fact that he can basically do whatever he wants because he just had this career renaissance. Like he's on top of the world and he's able to do a song like Hark the Herald Angels Sing and just go for it and put it on tape and put it out for the entire world to listen to. And I think the confidence in himself is what allows it to work as a song because, you know, if you were a young man trying to do something like that and you didn't have the range, I just don't think you would ever even try to pull it off. And I think Bob Dylan just, he knows he might not be able to hit every single note on this, but he's gonna try. He knows that, the world's gonna embrace him and I think doing it in 2009 was just the perfect career move for Bob at the time, and he pulls it off. He really does. It's a very fine Christmas album. And yeah, it's just one that will make you smile if you listen to it. Even if you're not the world's biggest Bob Dylan fan, like myself, it still brought a smile to my face the moment the sleigh bells and the male choir and then Bob drops in. It's just like God love him. Just God love him, man. He's doing it.
Again, I respect people's opinions. I really do. It's just so and I know I'm coming at it from a huge bias being the Dylan fan that I am, but it is just so hard for me to wrap my head around. And again, we have great friends. We have great friends who will be commenting on this video talking about how much they hate it and it's the worst thing he ever did and blah 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 blah. And you know what? Those friends know who they are, and to them I say, I love you. But it boggles my it's like, how can you not have fun with this? This to me is just pure absurd joy. But it's also not absurd because, like I said, it makes so much sense. It's just have a good time with it. It's so fun.
Well, I think we're out of things to talk about as far as Christmas in the Heart goes. I don't think we'll ever have this amount of joy on this program ever again. Sad to say.
Did that smile on your face, did it stay there pretty consistently throughout the record?
It did. There was no point where it turned to a frown or a grimace. My heart grew at least 3 or 4 times that day. Um, I mean, yeah, even when Bob couldn't quite hit the notes, it's still got a kick out of it.
It just albums like Christmas in the Heart really, that's what makes it worth it, suffering through the under the red skies of the world, you know? That's how I feel.
I don't want to spoil for future programs, but I imagine Christmas in the Heart is not in your bottom, I don't know, 10 maybe? 5? You don't have to answer that.
I
It
guess
sounds
it's,
like it's at least above Under the Red Sky.
I won't confirm nor deny. Is it a top 10 Bob Dylan record for me? Who knows? It's not. The next record that we're going to be talking about, I know multiple people who would put it in their top 10 Dylan records. 2012's Tempest. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you don't know a single thing about this record.
I know the name Duquesne Whistle.
Okay.
I don't know how. I don't think I've ever actually heard it. I've heard it talked about. But coming into this podcast, I may have known that there was an album called Tempest, but everything else about it is new. Even the cover was kind of surprising to me when I saw it. Kind of poking around on Wikipedia, looking at all the albums that we'd have to listen to, and that was one that stood out in the lack of knowledge that I had about it. It was one of those great unknowns that riddled his discography, where I was like, well, that'll be a surprise. That'll be something.
Yeah, Tempest. This is a pretty interesting record, I think, for a few reasons. I'm sure at this point that there could be a drinking game on this channel for how many times I've said that over the last year and a half. Going into this one, I think there's a few things I think to keep in mind. There is, I guess, I personally don't think that Time Out of Mind, Love and Theft, Modern Times Together Through Life. I don't think that any of those four albums sound exactly alike, but there's somewhat of a through line. Some of the bluesier soundscapes and approaches and whatnot. I think keep that in mind. I'm interested to see if you kind of keep in mind where he's been at musically during these last 15 years, and even kind of so we've heard in these last two records, Together Through Life and Christmas in the Heart, the voice maybe not being up to the level that you felt it was, especially on Modern Times. But I'm interested to see what you think about the relationship between the sound of his voice, where it kind of generally musically lives, and the overall sort of subject matters of the songs. Because I think there's an interesting relationship going on between those three things. So I would encourage you to remember that, and keep that in mind. And keep in mind the joy that Christmas in the Heart brought you, and see where you find the moments of joy in Tempest.
That's kind of an ominous portent you dropped there. I'm a little frightened of what we'll discover here on Tempest.
Well, you should be frightened, because if I can give you one spoiler, I'm pretty sure that of all his records, Tempest has the highest body count when you listen to the lyrics.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
So when you say ominous, you're kind of hitting the nail on the head.
I mean, just the cover alone looks like a noir kind of, high body count. It's, the name's in red and it's kind of dark.
Well, yeah, and Time Out of Mind, especially, there's a lot of sort of like death encroaching themes, but the way that he talks about death on Tempest is very different than how he's talked about it in the past. So I'll just say keep that in mind, and I'm interested to see where we go from here.
Okay. Well, we will delve into Tempest on the next episode. As for this episode, it was a joyful one. It was a fun one. Fun listening to Christmas in the Heart, Bob Dylan's classic Christmas album. I will say, I have not heard it mentioned that much, Christmas in the Heart, comparatively, at least in the real world. You'd think,
Do you hear that?
Santa? Bob Dylan? He's on the roof.
Sorry, I've been planning that for an hour. What were you
No,
saying?
it's fine. I was just just saying, I would have thought I would have seen Christmas in the Heart out in the wild a little bit more. It being a modern Christmas album from a beloved, artist such as Bob
I
Dylan.
mean, I was able to score it. God, I hate these Zoom backgrounds. Not that I'm not in my real living room right now or anything. This is a vinyl record. You just can't tell. Man, when I was working at Barnes and Noble recently, we had it for sale, and so
Okay.
obviously you're just not looking hard enough.
Maybe I'm not looking hard enough. Maybe I'm missing all the Christmas in the Heart mentions and, songs on the radio that,
Well, it's most certainly not being played on the radio, but I
no,
mean,
no.
I if I was the DJ, let me tell you.
Maybe someday. Christmas music usually takes a while to kind of integrate and weasel into the collective fabric of a
You,
holiday. We
I
still have Brenda Lee charting at number one 50 years after the
That's
song came
true.
out.
Probably, I mean, I feel like the last true like commercial Christmas instant classic was probably Mariah. But I will say, if not a true commercial classic, Must Be Santa by Bob Dylan does get talked about quite a bit in music circles.
Yeah, okay.
It's had staying power. Like I said, much more staying power than his other album from 2009, as far as I'm concerned. We
That's
are
true.
People still talk about this album well over 15 years later because it is just so God, I'm just so happy it actually exists. It's so perfect.
Well, okay. In 50 years, I expect Must Be Santa to hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. We'll hold out. If it happens, we'll do a special episode on it, of
Yes.
course.
Yes.
Years down the line. So, what do you think of Christmas in the Heart? A, what do you think of Christmas albums? You can leave that in the comments. And B, how do you feel Bob Dylan tackled the subject of Christmas on Christmas in the Heart? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Is it going to be like many of the Christmas albums that we've talked about on this channel at the very bottom of your, Bob Dylan rankings? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, of course, subscribe to the channel. Check the description for all the good stuff, Patreon links, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. God, I can't even remember all of the channels that we have to push as a modern YouTube channel. You got to hit all the socials. You got to do it all. So check those out. Subscribe there as well. And get listening to Tempest because we will be talking about that next time on a probably less joyful edition of the Discovering Module podcast.